I've made a discovery. If you really want to piss people off, just do this. It's okay to sometimes put a tomato in the fridge. Feel good? Let's talk for real. Look, I was once like one of the many people out there who believed firmly that you should never put a tomato in the refrigerator. But I've changed my mind and I want to tell you why. I want to be clear up front. I do not think the refrigerator is the best place to store a tomato. There's plenty of anecdotal experience and scientific studies that have established that fact. The problem is that by establishing that the refrigerator is not the best place to store a tomato, a rule has emerged that people follow blindly and dogmatically without ever thinking about whether there might be situations in which refrigerator is the better place to store a tomato. Sometimes it's your best option. There are even studies that back this up. I saw one study that found that you can put a tomato in the fridge for up to 3 days with no noticeable loss in flavor. Only when you get to 7 days and more does the flavor really start to fall off, and I'm not talking about putting tomatoes in the fridge for 7 days. I've seen some studies that study tomato storage at cold temperatures up to 30 days. This is not a home situation. This is a situation that commercial growers are looking at. So this other study that gets referenced a lot by people in the no refrigeration camp, the never refrigeration camp, is this one from 1987 where they took tomatoes, they put them in storage, refrigerator, not refrigerator, they blended them up into a slurry, and they found that a very specific aromatic molecule, Z3-hexanol, degrades at cold temperatures. Deciding to never refrigerate a tomato because of one important aromatic molecule being degraded in a very weird kind of testing scenario. It's kind of like concluding that you shouldn't breathe just because you've realized that there's too much pollution in the air. You still have to breathe. Like, the science is not wrong. The conclusions that are being drawn from the science are faulty. Tomato is like an avocado, a banana, a peach, a melon. It is a fruit that continues to ripen even after it's been picked. What this means is the tomato has this really nice, slow, gradual ramp up towards ripeness. It hits its peak, its moment of perfection, and then it drops off precipitously after that. The flavor starts to taste duller, it loses some of its clear acidity that balances out its natural sweetness. The texture goes from silky to mushy, and eventually the tomato starts to rot. It starts to develop really soft, squishy spots, mold grows on it, it caves in on itself. It's disgusting. It can happen really quickly, especially at warmer temperatures. Take 2 tomatoes of the same variety, 2 beefsteak tomatoes that are roughly similar levels of ripeness starting out. And let's leave one at room temperature, and let's put the other one in the fridge, and let's just see what happens. My advice is leave your tomatoes out at room temperature until they reach their moment of ripeness, or they're getting really close to it. And then if you're not going to eat them right away, like within 12 or 24 hours, refrigerate them. I promise you, in most cases, that tomato will be better than one that you let sit out past its peak at room temperature longer than you should have. When you are ready to eat them, try to let them come back to room temperature before you do. So a couple of days ago, I went to the farmer's market here in New York City, and I bought a variety of different tomatoes. I got a few different kinds of heirlooms, some grape and cherry tomatoes, I got some beefsteaks. And over the course of the past few days, I have looked at the tomatoes and decided which ones felt like they were reaching their peak and moved them to the fridge. So the ones on this tray have all been in the fridge for 2 days. The tomatoes on this tray have been in the fridge for 1 day. And these tomatoes have never been in the fridge. And I just want to be clear, I don't think that like these will be better than these will be better than these. But I also don't think that these are going to be in every case better than these. I think it's going to depend on the tomato and where it was in its life cycle. This is just a smaller example of a much bigger series of tests that I did here on the East Coast, and Kenji helped me repeat those tests on the West Coast with his own homegrown tomatoes. If the no refrigeration rule is true, then what testing should show is that in almost every instance, a refrigerated tomato should clearly be ranked worse in a blind tasting than its room temperature stored counterpart. But it's just not what we found. The results were very messy. It was not clear cut one way or the other, but that's the point. Messy results undermine the never refrigerate rule. So here we have 3 of these sun gold cherry tomatoes. I'll cut into them first and just kind of take a look. And I think we all kind of know, like, of all the tomatoes, cherry tomatoes tend to fare the best in the refrigerator. Room temp, hasn't seen a fridge. It's very good. The one that's been in the fridge for just a day. Very sweet. 2 days of refrigeration, and it's really nice and sweet and delicious. Grape tomatoes, really sweet. A little less sweet. Nice and sweet, closer to the first one. I'm seeing more difference just from one tomato to the next within a group than I am from one group to the next. None of them are bad, none of them have been ruined. Let's do the beefsteaks. Now the beefsteaks were the ones when I bought them, they were still, I would call them firm ripe. If I expect anything, I might expect the non-refrigerated one to be the best because they really did need some more ripening time. There is this kind of rim of whiter color in the flesh that often corresponds with underripeness. Still probably could use a little more time. Did I ruin them? Are they just like awful? Or, you know, people get so worked up about whether a tomato goes in the fridge or not. Good texture, not a great tomato, period. Maybe slightly more acidic hair, a little bit less sweet, but this one's not really killing it on the sweetness either. It's not that different, so that's a big piece. Whatever. It's not particularly sweet. They're all very similar. The differences are not earth-shattering. The fridge has not done any irreparable harm to these tomatoes. Probably hasn't helped them. They needed a little more time to get a little bit closer to where this one is, but differences would not be obvious at all to most people. So these heirlooms will be interesting because they're quite firm. Kind of the heart of the interior of the tomato, it does have that kind of white color, and maybe that's a sign also that this tomato just could have used more time. It's sweeter than I would expect for a tomato with this level of firmness. This is maybe a hair sweeter, the non-refrigerated one. Being out of the fridge helped this one. The cherries, the grapes, the beefsteaks, and now these, none of them, what I say so far, have been ruined texturally, either from being out too long or from being in the fridge. This one was left out at room temperature. And this one has got mold festering on the bottom of it. Now the whole tomato is not bad, you can still eat it, you can cut out the bad spot. By no means is this tomato ruined, but these tomatoes were all really like pushing the edge of ripeness, and leaving this one out has not done it any favors. This is when you want to put a tomato in the fridge to avoid this kind of thing. Not that high in flavor, not that sweet. Here's the one that was in the fridge for 1 day that was showing some real softening of the flesh. It's mush. This is the one that was in for 2 days, and I anticipate it really being not sweet just by the looks of it. It's really not sweet. These are brandy wines. Like, it's like bending in my hand. No. It's got some life left in it. This refrigerated one, in my opinion, is better than this never refrigerated one. And here's the one that was in for 2 days and is definitely super ripe. It's past its prime, but it doesn't taste as, it hasn't given up entirely. And that's the thing the fridge can help you with. It's when your tomato is cresting its peak and on its way down, it can slow down that descent, it can kind of hold you at the peak longer. And even when you've gone over the top, it can help you retain some of the qualities that make the fruit nice to eat. That's the point in all this tasting. It's not the refrigerator's good. It's not that the refrigerator's the best place to put your tomatoes. It's definitely not. It's just that it's more complicated than saying never put a tomato in the fridge. That's the point. Look at your tomatoes, exercise some judgment, and maybe sometimes consider that the fridge might be your best option.